Hey guys, today I'm going to talk a little bit about video games. This is probably something I should do in a draw my life, but I said it before because some people ask me how did I get into the video games, and this is it. I used to go to the arcades all the time. As a kid, I used to spend all my money in the arcades. I would take a bus, go spend all my money, and save just enough money to take a bus home. Or I'd have my mother would drop me off at the arcade. I'd be there all day. That was me. That was my life. I would just go to the arcades and play. And I used to, believe it or not, figure out clever ways of beating the game. Funny ways. Like, for example, one of my favorite games at the time was track and field. So I bought an electric toothbrush and I brought it with me in my pocket. And I don't know if you guys remember, track and field was a game where you had to hit the buttons super fast to run. And then you hit a button and jump, and you could break records. So I had my electric toothbrush and I'd go on the button and I'd run super fast. So yeah, back then I was doing clever usage of game mechanics, always trying to figure out how to excel at the games or do over the top things in games. So I played video games for a while, and eventually I was able to save enough money to actually buy my own video game. Okay, luckily I was able to meet someone that was in that business, and I became friends with him, and he helped me out. He showed me everything that I needed to do. So he was the kind of guy, he actually built his own video games. So I would go to his house and I would help him out, and I would buy parts from him, and little by little I was able to buy a big coin-op machine and parts, and I actually build it myself. So it was a learning experience. And you know what my first game was? Street Fighter, of course. I bought the Street Fighter 2 coin-op machine, actually, where it took quarters, and I designed the case. I made the case extra wide, so people, when they played against each other, they weren't crunched up together. So I thought of people that were playing. So it was a super wide area so that people can play. I took the machine. After it was done, I put it in the back of my car, and I started driving around looking for locations. At the time, what you do in that business is you find a location like a pizzeria or a bar or whatever, and you ask them, hey, can I leave this machine here, and I'll give you 50% of the profit. And so I started doing that, and I think one of the first places I asked, they were like, okay. So I was like, cool. I think it was the very very first place I put a machine, I think was a Chinese food place. Yes, it was a Chinese food place. Oh no, I remember now. I asked the lady, hey, can I speak with the manager? It was a Chinese food place, but it had a lot of area for a video arcade. They had too much room in that place. And I asked them, hey, I'd like to leave a video game here. I own video games. And they were like, well, no, it's okay, no. I'm like, but it was good. I'm convincing them, it's good. Hey, why not just leave it there? And they're like, no, we don't want that. Come on, look. If you leave it there, it doesn't make any money next week, I'll take it. What do you have to lose? I give you 50% of the profit. So I convinced them. I managed to convince them. They were like, okay. So I was like, yes, be right back. I went to my car, and I pulled out, and I had a cart. I pulled out my big machine, and I brought it in. They were like, oh, it's so big. And I'm like, yeah, it's a video game. So I put it up against one of the walls. Boom. I need a plug, so I had to go out and buy an extension cord. I put an extension cord. They put it behind the counter. I plugged it in, and then I left. And then every once in a while, I would drive by the business. I'd drive by and I'd look, and I wouldn't see anybody playing. And I was like, oh man, what the heck? So, but I didn't want to look. So I waited 1 week exactly, and then I went back to my machine to take the quarters out, and I opened it because it had a little box on the bottom. I have a special key. I opened it. It was full to the top with quarters. I was like this. Oh, it's full! And the lady at the business, the same lady, she saw all the quarters, and she was like, so many quarters? I'm like, yeah. And I had to go in the back, and I had to start all rolling the quarters, putting them in rolls. And so I think my first video game made about I don't know, it was about $400. And at the time, that was good money. So $400, and then I think I split it evenly. So, and the lady said, "Hey, do you have more machines?" And that's how my video arcade business started. So I'm this young guy, and I started my own business. I started with one video game, then I started with another video game. I had a good job at the time. I got a good job. I was working in UPS, United Parcel Service, so I was making good money too. I was working part-time in UPS, and then I did my video game business on the side. And little by little, it started growing and growing and growing, and I had more and more video games, and eventually got to the point where I had too many machines. But I would go once a week, get all the money out of the machines, and I lived off of that for about 2 to 3 years. What happened with the business? Well, wait, let me tell you how many games I had. I had about, I lost count. I had about, I would say 5 or 6 arcade games. I had 2 pinball machines. I had 5, I think I had like 5 gambling machines. I got into the gambling thing too. There were, at the time where I lived in Puerto Rico, you had the little fruit machines, and people could put dollars in the machine, and you know they can win money. So then what happened was I saw the new console games started coming out, and they started becoming better than the arcade games, and that was the very first PlayStation that came out. So that's about that time. The very first PlayStation came out, and I was like, what the heck? So I actually bought a PlayStation. I bought one of the very first versions. I think it was a Japanese version. I ordered it special. It cost me, believe it or not, $600. And I ordered it, and I had one of the very first PlayStations in the US. Well, in Puerto Rico. I had it in Puerto Rico. And you know what I did with it? I took apart all the controls. I took them apart, and I soldered cables, and I converted it into an arcade machine. And I put it in a business, and I made it accept quarters. I did a clever usage of game mechanics, and I made it into a video arcade game. And I remember the first game was Toshinden. I had Toshinden, and it made me money. Unbelievable. I used to love doing inventions like that. Okay, so then, what ended up happening is I saw where video games were going, and I saw that the video arcade business, the games were becoming more and more expensive. So it was taking more and more time to earn your money back. For example, if you bought one of the brand new games, it was called a Killer Instinct. That game would cost you $5,000 for the giant case. $5,000, $6,000. Now, you'd have to put that game at 50 cents, you know, to recover your money within a year. And then within a year, there was already a newer game. The games couldn't cost you a lot of money, because also if I had like 10 locations where I had video games, you had to buy video games for all 10 locations. I saw that the console games were going to become better than the coin-up games. So I sold everything. I sold my entire route. And guess what, guys? I got out just in time. It was like the stock market. When I sold my video game route, it crashed. Like after I sold it, like all of a sudden, like console games blew up, and people stopped going to the arcades to spend money, or because you could just play the same game, a better game at home. And all the game developers started making games for consoles, and they stopped developing games for the arcade games. Now some arcades still are successful because but they have the super games, the Dance Dance Revolution, the giant machine, and you put $1 in the machine, and you can dance, or you get the giant simulation games, or the redemption games, which is the games where you like throw a ball and it lands in the holes, and you accumulate points, and you get tickets, and you can redeem the tickets for a stuffed bear or prizes. That makes money. But in order to do that, you have to like invest in a full giant arcade, and I didn't do that. I just bought single arcade games and put them in locations. So my friends that stayed in that business, they got super hurt. They told me, "Oh, John, it's so bad right now." And I was like, "Man, dude, feel terrible for you. But at this, at the same time, I was so super happy I was able to get out of the business. So what happened when I got out of the business? I had to start working at a 9-to-5 job, and I worked for a 9-to-5 job for many years in Puerto Rico until finally I got to do this for YouTube. And this has been the most amazing thing ever, because my whole entire life I've loved playing video games, love everything about video games, and now I can play video games full time. So it's a dream come true. Would I ever do it again? I don't know. It was kind of fun. It was kind of fun owning a video game route. And in the back of my mind, I've always said to myself, I know how to run a video game business. So if I ever opened like a LAN center, a place where I have a gaming house at the house with computers, but if I ever opened like a LAN center where it's multiple computers, I would actually have arcade games in there. And I know the way the business works too. I don't have to buy the games. All I have to do is get a distributor that has the games. They put the games for free in my place, and I just make 50% of the profit. All I have to do is pay for the electricity. That was a good time in my life. Oh, and guess what? When I had those video games, believe it or not, I was addicted. I was addicted to those video games, the Street Fighter, the coin-op games. And then when I had my own, and I could play them for free, because I would have them in my house, I would just play them too. I just open the thing and go and just play it. I stopped becoming addicted once I owned a bunch of video games. It became a business now. Alright, I just wanted to share that with you. Maybe I'll do that in my drama life.